of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's a bug behind you. Thank you and welcome. Let the roll reflect that all council members are here with the exception of Councilmember Lund. Tonight we will be doing a proclamation for recognizing National Day of Deployed, Veterans Day, and Military Family Appreciation Month.
Whereas it has been a custom to honor and to recognize our nation's service members, veterans, and their families, and
whereas October 26th is the National Day of the Deployed, which honors the brave men and women who have been deployed in service of our country and acknowledges the sacrifices that military families make during deployment, and
whereas in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the first Veterans Day Proclamation, calling on our nation to pay homage to the veterans of all its wars who have contributed so much to the preservation of this nation, and
whereas November marks Military Family Appreciation Month, a time when America honors and recognizes the unique sacrifices and challenges family members make in support of their loved ones in uniform, and
whereas the Hastings City Council pledges our gratitude to every man and woman currently serving in uniform, to all veterans who have helped preserve and defend our precious freedom, and to every family member who shares in the service and sacrifice of military life, and whereas we ask you to remember to thank and to honor our veterans and their families for the sacrifices they have made for our freedom.
Therefore, be it resolved, the Hastings City Council hereby recognizes National Day of the Deployed, Veterans Day, and Military Family Appreciation Month. Thank you. And our little flags that you have on your Diaz is from Dean Markison. So we thank Dean for bringing this proclamation to us. And tonight we also have a presentation for the 2021 Levee Park Programming Recap. Welcome, Paige.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Happy to be here. I'm smiling under my mask right now. We had our 6th year of programming at Levee Park at the Rotary Pavilion. So I'm here tonight to share with you a brief recap. Our season just ended, just a short 3 weeks ago. Similar to previous years, we've utilized communication platforms online and with our local media partners here in Hastings. Calendars were also distributed to local businesses and featured in the Rivertown newsletter. To date, the top 2 ways our residents and visitors hear about our programming at Levee Park is through our Rivertown newsletter as well as our Facebook page. The 3rd highest actually being word of mouth. In 2021, we were able to have a full season, different from 2020, where we did not have programming in the month of June. So you'll see quite a big bump in attendance from 2019 to 2021, and consistently going up. We're seeing visitors and residents in Hastings attending our programming at Levee Park. With our programming, we did have 37 events. 7 events were actually canceled due to weather. So whether that was the heat advisory that we had for a few weeks, our thunderstorms that were forecasted frequently throughout this summer, and then the 90-degree heat that we had this summer was not too long ago, but those were some struggles that we faced. Of course, every year with weather, you just kind of never know what's going to happen. We try to make a consistent call for all of our events the day of at 1 p.m. To make the cancellation postponement call. And fortunately, with our agreements and contracts with our performers, groups, and program partners, we're able to reschedule for 2022. So those funds and that performance group would be rebooked. Offerings, we offered 6 different types of programming. Most popular is our Music in the Park. And this year, our partnership with Pleasant Hill Library took a pause, similar to last year. But an alternative is they had staff and volunteers put together some take-and-make crafts that went along with all of our themes for all of our story time in the parks. So whether those were daytime or evening story time in the park. So that was a fun alternative, and we still continue a partnership in that format with Pleasant Hill Library. Music in the Park, this was our first full year offering Music in the Park every Thursday from beginning of June to the beginning of September. And that was really well received, both by residents and visitors. And that definitely is a huge shout out to the Doffing Fund here in Hastings, making that possible through their donation last year and having those funds roll over to 2021 so we could utilize our $10,000 donation from the Doffing Fund, which really makes a difference in booking our high caliber groups, the 10-piece kind of ladies of the 80s groups that really draw a big crowd this summer. For our program funding, I continue to seek out grants and build partnerships with local organizations and businesses, whether those are monetary donations, sponsorships, or in-kind, to leverage our funding that's allocated. And this year, we received over $18,000 in grants, sponsorships, and donations, the Doffing Fund being one that rolled over from 2020. And then Ardent Mills is a continued sponsor for 6 years. Smead Manufacturing has been a sponsor for 5 years. And Dakota Electric has been a sponsor for 5 years as well. Huge thank you to all of our partners. We have over 87, I want to say almost 90 partners that I work with to facilitate all of our programming in our different offerings that we provide our residents and visitors in Hastings here, and continue to support from City Council and our Parks and Rec Commission. We're so grateful for those continued partnerships and making our programming happen here in Hastings for the 6th year. Levee Park at the Rotary Pavilion not only provides a location for all of our programming down along the riverfront, but also private and public park rentals. So private meaning like a wedding or a family reunion, and then public meaning like the Always Lucy Strong or the Relay for Life or the Rivertown Live Concert. So 49 was a big jump from 2019 and 2020. 2020, the downtick in being, of course, we did not host events at that facility in June. And then also just with the requirements for gatherings under 250, so we saw less groups wanting to use our spaces, but we're really excited and a huge uptick. And our park maintenance really worked hard to make that space accessible and available, and keeping that up for our rentals, whether they're half day, full day, back to back. So pretty much every weekend at Levee Park was busy. And I'm here to stand for any questions or comments. I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you for supporting our programming here in Hastings.
Thanks, Paige. Council, any comments for Paige? Well, I'll thank you for the community as well, because it's so exciting to go there every week, every Thursday, to hear music, good music, and I have so many people that come up to me and say how it's just such a wonderful pavilion. And Paige, I always give him your name. You are you decide on what events to do, and you seem to hit all the music that everyone likes. So we get that variation of people, but everyone comes, but it kind of concentrates on a certain group each week. So I think you've done a great job, and continued success for next year.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I look forward to programming in 2022. And a huge piece I take into consideration is those anecdotal conversations I have with our residents and with our visitors, just those conversations before, during, and after events. I try to be available to take their input.
Great, thank you. And also tonight, we have a presentation via Zoom, and we will be welcoming Christy Sebastian, and she is the Dakota County Traffic Engineer. She will be giving us a brief update on the pedestrian safety crossings for County Road 42. Welcome, Christy.
Yeah, Christy, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but you're on mute. I think we're trying to figure things out on our end here. Yeah, she should be. There you go. There we go. You're on. Yep, I think we can hear you, Christy.
Okay, well then I will start again. Thank you.
You want to switch the presentation? Yeah, how do we do
Because
that?
I am here to present information on the county's pedestrian crossing safety assessment, and more specifically, how this relates to an area within Hastings. So we began this assessment earlier this summer, and the goal is we recognize challenges with pedestrians crossing our county roadways. So we are looking to develop a consistent approach countywide to aid us in locations we've identified already that are concerned, and also moving forward with engineering reviews for concerns that might come up in the future. So our process involved several components. We're looking to identify locations that represented various crossings that we have. For example, 2-lane, higher speed roadway, 4-lane or 3-lane divided roadways. So we categorize that we want to be able to address those different types. We are looking at research that has been developed and policies both through MnDOT and federal highways. We're also looking at what people have done, agencies have done throughout the country as well. So key piece is that we are conducting observations and a survey at specific locations within Dakota County to really get that hands-on assessment of the different enhancements that we've decided to do and how they are working. And then all of that is going to come together for the ultimate objective to develop some findings and guidance for us moving forward to improve pedestrian safety. So pedestrian safety and actions that we might take may sound counterintuitive, but simply adding signing and marking, especially for some of our higher speed or multi-lane roadways, alone is actually not going to be a benefit or improve the situation from a safety perspective. So we really need to be careful and want to evaluate what the right approach is based on different conditions. And what I'm showing here is a few things in our toolbox. The considerations that we look at, I mentioned a few earlier, the speed and the geometrics. We also want to look at what the pedestrian activity is. Traffic volumes are considerations, along with as well as what is going on in the area. So we'll be looking at different conditions such as trail markings, maybe bringing location to a mid-block crossing, lighting. Of course, we recognize that these are mainly engineering. Our focus is more of an engineering approach. We recognize that ultimately we will need to be working with law enforcement education as well. So we have that comprehensive safety approach at the end. So one of the locations we initially looked at was along County Road 42 in Hastings between Madison and Pleasant. And we looked at this location based on concerns that were raised, and we identified that the best location would be a mid-block crossing that would bring the pedestrians to a location that is away from the activity at both of the intersections with people turning onto or off the roadway. To reduce conflicts, we would need to modify both the trail and the roadway in order to make that happen, put in new curb ramps, and provide a median refuge in the middle. So here I'm showing some of the things we discovered through the assessments. And with this being initially selected, one of the pieces of the assessment was to conduct a survey. So we put out some signs you may have seen, asking people to use their phone and connect with us, and we received 37 responses at this location specifically, and 100% of those people were positive about improving or enhancing a crossing in this area. They also noted that they have very little delay. So the issue is not that they're waiting to find a gap, but that they wanted some enhancements in order to cross more easily. So this is an overview of what we were planning to do. Again, it was a mid-block crossing. We'd like to add, move the through traffic away from the middle and have a median refuge in between, along with some signing. In order to do this, we'd also believe that lighting will help the area and a full median refuge would be constructed. So as we went along, I said we were planning on doing that. We decided to put a pause on that project specifically. We do think we have the right location in terms of being a mid-block crossing and where the pedestrians and bicyclists are coming from. But there is a greater level of questions and issues out here that we would like to address. So while we're looking to pause that particular element, we think it would be more comprehensive to look at County Road 42 pedestrian considerations for an entire corridor. That being the area from the river to river trail on the north end and down to the south. And this would look both from Riverdale down to, so I'm not forgetting the name of the street, but I believe it's Pine. And so we'll be looking at trail connectivity. We recognize there's a couple of sidewalk or trail gaps in the area. This study would also involve a greater level of community engagement, knowing that there's greater challenges here than just the one crossing. And then looking at a longer-term improvement versus the temporary enhancements. We are getting closer to the winter season. Some things we would be able to do on a temporary basis wouldn't be able to stay in the winter, and we wouldn't be able to do the lighting most likely. So doing this comprehensively will allow us to program a project to address not only the mid-block crossing that I mentioned, but these other areas as well. So the study would entail placing the study 42 from Riverdale to Pine in our county capital improvement program, and we've identified that it could be 42,161. We have an estimated cost for the preliminary design, conceptual work, and then the preliminary design estimate of $100,000. There is a 15% city share for the project, so the city would be looking at approximately $15,000. The preliminary design would start early next year, allow us to assess the pedestrian connectivity and what all the various concerns are, and be able to identify what enhancements and actions should be taken. So we could develop a full plan along with a cost estimate and have discussions through the 2022-2027 capital improvement program or CIP process next year with the city to it would be better inform them to know what the improvements may be and what those costs would entail. And with that, I thank you for inviting me here today, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Christy, for your presentation. Council, any questions at this time? Okay, no? Later on, we will be having a motion for this later in our packet. So thank you again, Christy.
Thank you.
Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the workshop or regular meetings on October 4th? Seeing none, they are approved. For public comments, we will be doing that right now, and we have options for comments to be mailed prior to the meeting, as well as interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the city council, and the receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. For live comments, they may either be through Zoom or in person. We ask that the attendees either raise to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Vaughn with a second. Council, do you have any new discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed state by saying nay. That motion prevails. Tonight, under Public Works, we already saw the presentation of the pedestrian safety assessment, and now I would accept a motion if there isn't any additional discussion for that, to accept the motion to accept the pedestrian safety assessment. Councilmember Leifeld.
So moved, Your Honor. I would like to recommend that we approve to authorize the pedestrian safety assessment joint study with Dakota County.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Leifeld. Councilmember Fox with a second. Any additional discussion, council? Oh, Councilmember Fox.
Just to add to that, I'm excited to see this study come through. I have many, many concerns from constituents about these crossings, particularly Pine River and in between Madison and exactly what we just saw. So I just want to thank the Operations Committee for moving this to our attention. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. 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 Opposed to the motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Tonight, under administration, we have a Focus Engineering contract. And for this item, we have an introduction by City Administrator Dan Waticha.
Good evening. We have contracted with Focus Engineering for the past 6 years for our city engineer service. Our current contract runs through December 2022, so a little over a year from now. My proposal is to amend that contract and do a few things. Most notably, to add some services, some responsibility for Focus to provide Public Works Director service for the city. This would be an interim appointment through the remainder of the contract, roughly the next year. Additionally, it does make some changes to the payments under the contract. Currently, we have a monthly retainer plus hourly service. Under this, it would change strictly to an hourly service. It retains Ryan Stimsky's hourly rate, but because of the change from retainer to hourly, as well as an addition of some additional hours, it would be a net cost increase for the city, which I believe reflects the added responsibilities of the Public Works Service or Public Works Director Service. In total, there actually is a cost savings because we're not filling the Public Works Director position at this time, but would expect that that could be kept in the 2022 budget as a placeholder so that if we needed additional project management or some additional assistance throughout the department, it helps us backfill that. The interim recommendation does a few things for us. One, it gives us some stability in the department at a key point in time. Obviously, we have closing out project with MnDOT on 316, planning for projects, future projects on 42 and 46 with Dakota County planning, which is starting to really ramp up for Highway 61 with MnDOT. And our workshop earlier this evening, some planning with Met Council for relocation of the wastewater treatment plant. So some real key projects going on helps to maintain those relationships and have experience that we have in-house with Ryan. Some stability so that staff and the public can see what we're doing instead of wondering what our efforts are for filling the vacant position. And Ryan Stemsky, with his time here, has really shown experience and built relationships with these other agencies that would serve us well to continue in an interim position. With that, I can take any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Council, any questions for Dan? Councilmember Brooks.
Since I wasn't on the operations committee, but I'm wondering, and I know Chair Lund isn't here, so maybe could council members Vaughn or Liefeld just summarize the discussion that you had in your committee, just so I don't re-ask any of the same questions?
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan did a decent job explaining it. I think what our biggest concern was, it's a department head. And I didn't really want to, I think the department head should be an employee of the city, but we're starting to recognize that it's like everywhere. There's a shortage of workers out there. And these, Ryan and his company is high value, and I get it why they do what they do. And Dan made the very good point that really helped me was, we got some big projects here in the next year and a half, and having Ryan stay with us as our Public Works Director and Engineering Service is very important to us to get us through this hump. And then we're gonna have to reevaluate. How do we look at this position? And it might be a better time at that time to go out and look for another Public Works Director. So that's how we kind of concluded that it's the next year and a half that was so important to us, and Ryan has been with us. And it's not just city projects, it's dealing with state and county on some projects. So it was important to have Ryan's expertise with us, to stick with us, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Honor. Yeah, and to Councilmember Vaughn's point, it was just a real eye-opening conversation for me, and when we talk about the fact that the people aren't out there, they're not applying for the jobs that we need at this level, especially. And so we talked about the, looking at within our own home, right, within the house here, and making sure that we're training and teaching and mentoring the staff that we have in an effort to have these jobs, as they can increase. So I had a lot of questions about it, and agreed with we want that position to be a city employee. But right now, this is, from what we came up with, it's what is best for the city right now, in completely capable hands of Ryan. So it was good conversation, and it's definitely what we found to be was right, not only for the city, but also for the staff out there, to give them that comfort level of having someone that they trust and that they know and is going to lead them. So that was our conversation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And my question is more about future planning. I support this motion. I support extending this contract to Focus Engineering. I'm just thinking about what's next. And so my question is, do we expect something to change in the next several years? If so, what? Or have we looked at the position, and are other cities doing similar things where they're having to contract out specific positions, or are they changing who they're looking to hire? How, kind of what is the future outlook for this position, and what can we do in the meantime to make sure that when we come back to this, we have new opportunities in the pipeline?
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Dan?
In terms of having some added bench within our department, we're not going to build that in a year. It might help with some of the existing positions so that they're in a better position for a step up, but not all the way to Public Works Director. I know that some of our peer communities are having difficulty hiring. It's not for similar positions. It's not something specific to Hastings. I wish I had the crystal ball to know what it looks like a year from now. There might be things that we could actions we could take to change that hiring environment in the future. This past summer, or earlier this year, when looking at hiring the position, we talked to some of our networks and contacts to come up with about a dozen names of potential candidates and recruited specifically, said, hey, you might be a good fit here, please consider applying. And we did have a couple of them did express some interest in the position. But, so anyways, the point being, I don't think it was, our advertising wasn't just a matter of put out an ad and we didn't get responses. We actually went out and beat the bushes and tried to find some. I think we would continue that type of effort. I think there's some other targeted recruiting we could do through Public Works Association and just some of those industry groups. Inver Grove Heights currently trying to hire for a similar position, I believe wound up after a failed first round, went and hired a headhunter. So there might be some other ways like that we could look at a year from now at does hiring a recruiting firm help get us additional candidates that we might not have identified? There might be an option like that. I think certainly we could look at things like reconsidering the requirements of the job description and things of that sort as well. I know there was a specific piece of our prerequisite in our job description that had some pushback and some question about if we set the bar too high, but going into it was something we had deliberately said that was a standard we wanted to have. But that might be something we would reconsider in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, my thought was just that if we're doing a compensation study also, that might address some of this. Is it possible that it would address this pay scale and really just thinking about what do we have to offer as a competitive advantage as Hastings? What are we offering these candidates that they can't get somewhere else? I don't know off the top of my head what I would say, but have we thought about our story and how we're pitching ourselves? That was just what was going through my mind.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm supportive of moving ahead with Ryan. I've been impressed with Ryan over the last few years, and so thank you, Ryan, for stepping up and wanting to serve in this capacity for our city. One thing that I was a little concerned about was just the number of hours that Ryan's going to be putting in 32 hours a week, whereas I guarantee Nick wasn't putting in 32 hours. I'm sure it was probably more like 48 or something like that. And so I just wanted to say that obviously that work still needs to get done, and perhaps it's being delegated to other, staff within the engineering department. And I just want to make sure that we're taking care of whoever that extra workload might be being pushed to. And that if there is another staff member that's suddenly, beginning to work out of class or needing to have their job duties relooked at, their job descriptions and such, I think that we should be fair to whoever else is picking up, the slack in the meantime. So I concur with Councilmember Brooks that I'm concerned that things aren't going to change within a year, because this isn't new, this whole dilemma about not being able to get qualified public works directors, within the metro area that are also requiring the engineering degrees. It's very common at this point. It's just that government doesn't pay enough, and there's not enough folks who are going into civil engineering to be able to fill all the slots that are available. So yeah, I think that we definitely need to think outside the box, and how is it that we're going to be doing this differently a year from now? Because I would put money down that we're going to run into the same scenario again if we just repost the position as it is, just because it's been going on for several years now, where this is a really difficult position to be able to fill here in Minnesota. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. No additional discussion, and I would look for a motion to accept the amendment to the professional services agreement with Focus Engineering. Councilmember Fox.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Brox. Additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed to the motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Again, Ryan, thank you for all your work that you've done and will continue to do. We're excited to have you to be continued to be here. And with 316 and all the other projects that you're going to be working on. Thank you. Good. Tonight, we are going to also look at liquor license fees, and Dan Waticha, you can continue your conversation with us on another item.
Thank you. This is not an action item tonight, but potentially would appreciate some feedback or direction from City Council. Last year, during the height of COVID, as well as this spring, as we were starting to come out of COVID, the City Council waived the fees for several different liquor licenses for on-premises establishments. Much of that, I believe, or I know in the prior conversations, much of that was due to restrictions put in place during COVID, whether it was state executive orders limiting hours of operation or occupancy limits. Recognize that impacted business viability. At this point, those orders have certainly expired, but COVID still does have an impact psychologically on people's willingness and comfort going to restaurants and bars in town. With that lead-in, if council is comfortable or so inclined at keeping our existing fees in place, those bills will go out at the end of November, due at the end of December, and no action is needed. The mechanism is already in place and will move forward. But if council has other thoughts and is interested in waiving or reducing fees again, need to know that so that we can have appropriate ordinance on the council agenda in November so that you can stop that automatic process and do something different. So I know that when we talked about it back in April, there was some hesitancy on was it right to waive it again, but council obviously decided to, but there also was some deliberate discussion on this is something we want to see, or you want to see again in 6 months and not have just automatically waived. So with that, I can take any questions you have, or certainly would appreciate any feedback on where your minds are about whether fees would be waived for the next 6 months or not.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion, council? If not, then we will just move on. Okay, Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, honestly, I haven't had the opportunity to speak at length with, you know, the restaurants in town who have the on-sale liquor licenses to know exactly where they are in their recovery process. You know, I don't know if any of the other council members have had, you know, that opportunity. I think that some of the, I've heard very, very positive feedback about the patio extensions, you know, down in the downtown area, and that that folks were feeling very good about that, but I'm not sure to what extent. I had heard a couple of the restaurant owners say that it has been slow going, and then furthermore, they've had a lot of difficulty with just staffing and having enough, you know, staff on hand to be able to even work at, you know, full capacity. And so I think it would be interesting to take the opportunity to get some feedback. I don't know if we would wanted, you know, to invite them so that we could have a public hearing from them and have, you know, some conversation, or, we all, just reach out on our own, or, that we just have, I just think it's fair to have a communication with them to really baseline how are they feeling, and to really be thoughtful about how it is we move forward. So I open that up for other discussion from the other
Councilmember
council members.
Fulch.
Thanks.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Anna. To Councilmember Fulch's point, as we've talked about this over the last year and a half plus, right? A lot of it started because, so, if there was a way that we were able, and I know there were programs, that we, that the state had and that the county had, and there were grants and there was, money available to other businesses as well. But just for the people who are listening and wondering, well, what is this? Why do we keep doing this with bars and restaurants? This is an in-house fee. It's something that we can control. I do see the staffing being an issue. It definitely has a lot of impact on how many people you can have in your bar or restaurant at a time, if they can be helped. So I'd be very curious to hear what everyone else's thoughts are. I think, to Councilmember Fulch's point, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how everyone feels. My significant other is in the industry, and I don't even have a answer for, obviously taking fees away is always helpful to a business, especially these small businesses that we're talking about. So I'd be curious to know what other council members think, and maybe it goes back to Dan's point where we say, what, let's look at it further, put it in our November agenda. I just don't think the answer to me today is, nope, let's just charge them. I think I need more than my being able to say to you today, yeah, that let's just go back to charging it in November, and it's back to business as usual for us. So that's my opinion anyway. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, I think our businesses all around town have done well. And I think they've truly appreciated the breaks that we have given them. I don't know that they're expecting additional assistance at this point, because they feel the community has really stepped up and supported them locally. I guess moving forward, if we maybe have a motion to look further into it, or do the other council people would like to speak? Oh. Okay. Otherwise, we just give Dan direction to either get a little more information, or we just move on and they mail out the licenses on November 1st. Councilmember Brox.
Would it be, instead of asking individual people, would it be worth a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce to see if they've had feedback in sort of a more generic way, so we're not reaching out to individual owners or individual businesses? Because I would imagine this varies. People's opinions are going to vary, so if we can identify like a pattern or some data in general, maybe the Chamber of Commerce would be a good resource to talk to, and then that information could come back to us with the next proposal or not.
Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Fox.
Speaking as a business owner, Your Honor, I would naturally abstain from this vote. However, I think it's valuable insight. Fees will have to be reinstated at some point. And business owners would much rather, and again, speaking from my own personal perspective, I would much rather start paying fees again after the summer than after the winter, and then budget it into the winter. So just considering this could be a cold, dark, scary time with COVID still out there during the winter time, bars and restaurants are not feeling very optimistic about that, my personal perspective. However, at some point, we're going to have to reinstate fees. We have to pay for liquor licenses. So that's something that has been considered, hopefully, by most and many bar and restaurant owners. I agree with Councilmember Brox. I think reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce would be a great resource. I know they recently, again, personal perspective, did a survey of what your main concerns and stresses are. So there's some fresh data there that we could work with. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Vaughn.
I think we still need, I would need a matrix of why we have fees for a reason, so we're gonna have to backfill that somehow. And I like to get input, but I also want a matrix. We need to justify versus word of mouth, or someone saying, hey, I could really use it. I understand everything, but when do we use a matrix to say, okay, now there's a reason why we do something? That's why I support what staff's saying today, that we need it. There's no matrix to say, you know what, like Councilmember Liefeld talked. Before it was because they were restricted. Now I get it staffing, but there's a lot of businesses that are restricted. We're one of them. We can't find a public works director. So we got a good one though. I got it. Full disclosure, I really like the focus engineer. That's what I want. So I'd be very cautious waiving fees again, because it's going to come from somewhere, and it's the taxpayers through their budget. So I would want a matrix before we justify waiving them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Okay, Councilmember Brock.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I was just thinking similar thoughts. If we can consistently waive the fee, then why are we collecting it? And obviously, if we need the fee, it is covering some cost. And if we're not going to have that revenue, then do we need to have that fee at all? So I guess my question is a little bit broader, in the sense that if we're charging a fee that we can easily waive, maybe we should be approaching liquor licenses with a different structure than if we're just able to just say, well, we're gonna do without $43,000 of revenue, you know? So I guess my thoughts on it are, I would support reinstating the fee for some of the reasons that Councilmember Fox was saying, after the summer and not in the middle of the winter might be better. And if we don't need to have this money, then why are we charging it in the first place? So that would be my question about waiving it again, if that was proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Brock. Yes, Dan.
Just as a partial clarification, although we have waived those fees for the last year and a half, we've backfilled that with CARES and ARPA money. So it has not been a hole in our coffers. That without that other funding, it would have had a more direct impact on city, and it's not a fee that we've gone without or could easily do away with.
Okay, so you have your direction, Dan? Thank you, Council. All right, tonight, Renew the Arts Task Force. For this item, Dan will continue.
Thank you. As I'm sure you recall, after our, or during our last city council meeting, there was lengthy discussion about a proposal to consider creating an arts and culture commission. The city council referred that to the planning committee of council, who is council members Fulch, Liefeld, and Vaughn. They met last week and discussed the importance of having arts in our community and how do we continue to support that. Recognize some practical limitations with just a matter of not having staff bandwidth to take on added responsibilities to supporting a commission. The committee recommended several parts, but essentially to reinvigorating our existing arts task force, and additionally asking it a couple of specific things. One, let it do some of that advisory role at what does it see about potential structural changes. You know, is a task force adequate, or is that too time-bound, and should there be something more ongoing, such as a commission? Some of the other logistics of potentially making a change or not making a change. How do we support it from a staffing standpoint? How do we support it with volunteers in the community? How do we support it from a budget standpoint? But charging the task force with what are its advisory pieces to how that might look going forward. The other is not wanting to have a pause on the importance of arts in our community, but wanting it to actually identify some short-term action items the next 6 to 12 months, some things that the task force might be able to take on in the immediate future. Recognize that there's some other questions about, the task force hasn't met in a couple of years. Are individual members still able and interested in it? Is this the role that they signed up for? Is this changing and maybe their interest has changed? Obviously, some people from the community that made the commission proposal have expertise and passion that might be tapped to either join the task force or help supplement it or enlarge the existing task force. But essentially, that's what the planning committee's recommendation was let's get the task force back in operation, have it make some recommendations for the long term, as well as identify some short-term tasks that it could take on to support arts. And with that, I can certainly take questions, and all the planning committee members are here and can certainly speak to it as well, or clarify something that I might have glossed over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Dan. That was a very well-said synopsis of our conversation. I would add, however, that the three of us were all very supportive of moving forward, and there was agreement that we felt there probably was enough support to move ahead with an arts commission. However, we wanted to also, just be very respectful about the implications of having a commission and its impacts, to staff. And so, staffing when you're starting a new commission is a big lift, because you need a person who is, knowledgeable and has some background in, that subject matter, but then they also have to have the bandwidth. And so I think that it's really prudent, to start with the arts task force, so that whoever it gets, assigned to, so that they can, track the number of hours, that they're having, to put into it, so that there's a level of effort. And then as a part of all of the other recommendations, I think it's really important that we all recognize, what the implications of that are on staff members. I think some folks just, think that, what do you need a staff person for? All they're just putting together an agenda. And it's not true. The staff do so much legwork behind the scenes that I don't think folks can really, comprehend how hard they work, especially when there's analysis that needs to be done, or, follow-up, minutes to meetings and all of that. So I think that it's just very, very important that we're being, cautious in that respect. But as Dan had said, we all felt that it was important to keep this moving along, and so that we don't lose synergy. I highly recommend, and the other council members can chime in about, I think it is very important to expand the membership of this new arts task force. Task forces usually have a shorter duration of time attached to them, and furthermore, they have a specific objective. And the original objective of the original arts task force was to, expand public art within our community. And so that there was an allocation, I believe it was $10,000 that was set aside, and it was, up to them to figure out, okay, well, what what makes sense for our community and how do we go ahead and award that. And the final product was the beautiful mural that we have now on the Hastings Family Service, back wall. And so with moving ahead now again with the Arts Task Force, just to, be very clear that the objective is no longer that it will be just specifically figuring out, future objectives and missions for the group, coming up with a short-term work plan, and really making recommendations about how to move forward. And perhaps, that's also, well, what does that mean staffing-wise? Do we need another half-time person? Do we do staff augmentation by, contracting with someone who does arts-related consulting? Just so that we have, something firmer to move ahead with. I just think that it would be very prudent. And because we all recognize that there have been some challenges with some of the other tasks or the commissions within the city, and we want to make sure that, volunteers who would also be on the commission, that it's time well spent for them, and that we're setting everyone, staff including, up for success, into the future. And so I know it's probably not what some individuals in the community were hoping for, that we would just move forward with the commission. But, the one thing that I've learned in the last 5 years I've been on the council is that you really have to have patience. You would hope that we could snap our fingers and move some things along very quickly, but doing our due diligence and making sure that we're moving forward in a prudent manner will hopefully, result in a better product in the end. So with that said, I'll personally make a motion, just to get it out there, that we reinvigorate the Arts Task Force. We do expand the membership and define its objective as being, coming up with recommendations for how to move forward with an Arts Commission, which includes staffing recommendations, roles and responsibilities for commission members and staff, creating a work plan, a short-term work plan, and taking into consideration what a budget might look like for an Arts Commission, to have a small amount of money perhaps that's set aside for, so that work can be done, and that they're not, their hands aren't tied if they would like to do a little, program implementation. So I know that was probably a really long motion, but I just think it's really important that we really define how it is that we would like for this to proceed. So thanks.
Councilmember Fulch. I'd look for a second to the motion. Councilmember Liefeld. Additional discussion, council. Councilmember Brox.
So I am supportive of the motion. I just have a question about some of the underlying assumptions. So what I heard Dan saying is there's still going to have to be some work done from a staff perspective on like having conversations with current Arts Task Force members. There could be recruiting for new Arts Task Force members. There's several things, creating a direction for the group, a mission. Some of that has already been laid out in draft form. So my question is, it seems like there's an underlying assumption that the Arts Task Force would be less staff intensive than a commission. But my question is Dan, some of the things I just mentioned still have to be done. And is there availability from a staff perspective to support some of those tasks? Because that's the only reason that I was concerned last time. And I don't know if of a commission versus a task force matters from a staff perspective, because there's still originating tasks that will have to be done because this is a new thing. So whether it's a new commission or a reinvigorated Arts Task Force, it sounds like there's still staff work to be done. Is that true, or am I missing something?
In terms of the initial reinvigorating the task force, if it's a matter of making 7 phone calls to see if people are still interested in serving in the somewhat refashioned body, although it takes time, it's 7 phone calls, maybe a follow-up phone call, but it shouldn't be that difficult to getting it relaunched. The real place that it becomes more difficult is that ongoing support. If this body, call it a task force, call it a commission, call it something else, if it's going to start meeting monthly, that's the place that'll be more difficult for staff support. I want to be optimistic and think that we can give it some, but really, I don't have a last meeting that some of those people that might serve on the task force would bring their knowledge and their passion, that sort of voluntarily they would pick up some of that staff role. So although there might be a need to schedule a meeting, take minutes, research some topic, really hopefully whatever might fall on staff, at least early on, would be minimal. You know, possibly the recommendation might be, here's what it needs long-term for going forward, and that might mean, you know, some more dedicated staff going forward. But the hope is that in this initial kickstart to it, that it would have enough momentum and interest from the members themselves that they would carry it, or most of it.
If I could respond, it just sounds like you are supportive of this effort and you are in agreement with the planning committee's recommendation and you can support it from a staff perspective.
As it's presented with restarting the task force, charging it with reviewing what its structure might be, you know, what are some budgetary, staff support, mission, sort of the governance aspect to it as a task force or commission, and charging it with, come up with a short list of short-term immediate goals that it might work towards. That kickoff, I can certainly support. The implementing those goals, over the next 6 to 12 months, it really will need for the members of that task force or some of their support network to step up to pulling those off. But I can certainly support the motion. I certainly do.
Thank you. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I support the motion too, and I appreciate the conversation. The one part that I hesitated a little bit with the motion was create a budget, and I hope the budget is to determine what will it cost on staff time, because we don't allow any of our other commissions to create a budget. So I want to make sure that we're not setting a precedence. I hope that the budget part of the motion is, what does it really cost us if we were to implement a full commission? So otherwise, I support everything that was said today. I think it's the right thing to do it this way, and Councilmember Foltz is right. Be patient, because we got to make sure we do it right if we're going to do it, in my opinion. So let's just make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the I's as we move forward into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fox.
I want to honor the disappointment that the advocates might feel when they watch this meeting. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know we had a very long conversation the last meeting about a commission, and this is a different thing, and that's okay. And I also want to honor the committee structure that me and my colleagues work within, and hashing out ideas in a committee is working for us. So thank you for your time doing that, and I too support this motion, particularly the way it was detailed and worded. So thank you, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. And Councilmember Levee.
Thank you, Your Honor. And being part of that committee that had this conversation, for me, it's a matter of, this is a spot for us to get it started, right? We've talked about it, and it's like, what do we do? How do we get this rolling? And to me, and I've used the expression skin in the game, but it's a budgetary issue for me. And I've learned a little bit from my colleague, Councilmember Vaughn, and when we talk about, this budget's already in place for next year. So this gives us that opportunity to look at it, to get it moving, to get it started, to find out how it's going to work for the city, because I know there's a great untapped resource there from a city, city level with the arts. So for me, it was a budgetary concern right now. This gets it started, and we can continue to move it forward and see where it goes come next budget cycle. So that was my standpoint on it. So I also support the recommendation. Thank you, Honor.
And I'll just add to it, I'm sure they're listening in the crowd, so we do feel and we know your passion, and we're trying to work together to get arts, culture back continued in our community. So like Councilmember Fultz said, we'll be patient and we'll get through this like we've done many other things. So thanks, committee, for your time in this, and there is a motion on the table. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. 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 Those not in favor of the motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Council members, do you have any announcements? Okay, I do have a few. The council did hold a closed session on Monday, October 4th, to conduct the performance evaluation of the city administrator and provided him with direction and feedback. The Hastings Police Department is holding its annual Pink Patch Project to raise awareness and support breast cancer research. A variety of items are available for sale through October 29th. On Saturday, October 23rd, about 50 new boulevard trees will be planted to replace replaced trees that were removed this summer due to emerald ash borer. Volunteers are needed to help with planting trees. Thank you to the Tree Trust Committee for providing the trees. ArtSpace is inviting the public to view art displays and to learn more about artists and ArtSpace on Saturday, October 23rd, from noon to 3. The community Halloween party is Friday, October 29th, from 6 to 8 at the high school lower level. The free event includes giveaways and candy, activity stations, and costume contests. The Downtown Business Association is holding a Halloween candy crawl on October 31st from 2 to 5, and that will be on 2nd Street. Compost your pumpkin at your free pumpkin drop-off on Sunday, November 7th from 3 to 8 at the Dakota County Maintenance Shop. Please remove paint, candles, wax, and other non-organic materials. Meetings to follow are Tuesday, October 19th. The Heritage Preservation Commission has been canceled. Thursday, October 21st, the Planning Commission workshop is at 6 p.m. with a Public Safety Advisory Commission meeting at 6:30 p.m. Monday, October 25th, Planning Commission is at 7 p.m. Thursday, October 26th is Finance Committee at 7:30 a.m. Monday, November 1st is City Council meeting at 7 p.m. And with those announcements, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Brox. No discussion. All right. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, state by saying aye. 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 Opposed, state by saying nay. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.